This is Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock.
And welcome to the program. This next week, the U.S. Senate debate will ramp up in Arkansas, if that's even possible, as Senator Mark Pryor, Congressman Tom Cotton square off in two back-to-back debates. KATV Channel 7 with the Fayetteville Chamber of Commerce will be host to the last debate, and it's the only one to feature the two candidates in a one-on-one setting. Joining me now, however, is Jonathan Martin. He's the national political correspondent with the New York Times in Arkansas. Great to have you with us. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Roby.
All eyes on Arkansas next week. Is that a safe assumption to say with the high-profile nature of this Senate race?
I think you could say all eyes are on Arkansas for much of this year because of the Senate race that you have, because of the governor's race you have, and of course because of the fact that you've got a once and perhaps future first family that happens to have roots in this state that has an intense interest in this cycle's elections, Roby. And President Clinton was here, of course, 2 days last week, and so I think the debate next week will get lots of attention, and I think people think the race is still really close, the Senate race is, and so I think this could be one of those moments where a debate really does change a race.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And let's talk about the polling that you talked about there a little bit. Kind of pick your poison. You can find a poll that shows Tom Cotton's up by 2 points, 5 points, 7 points. You can find one that shows Mark Pryor with some same advantage, which tells me that it's pretty much even. When I look at the advertising logs and what's going on, I see third-party groups on the Republican and the Democratic side spending tremendous sums of money here in Arkansas. That tells me the race is close.
Yeah, that's right. You know, when you're covering these campaigns, and especially in October, the best rule of thumb, Roby, is folks vote with their feet. And when it comes to campaign ads, that means they're either spending or they're not spending. And so if they're still in a state and they haven't left the state, then they're still invested here, and then they think that they still have a shot to win here. And so when you see both sides dropping a lot of money into the second week in October, that means it's still a competitive race. This is the time of the election cycle when you see campaigns and committees start pulling out money, redirecting money. Hasn't happened here, at least not yet.
Yeah. Let's talk about, too, you mentioned Bill Clinton earlier. I may ask you to do a Bill Clinton impersonation while you answer this question.
Well, yours is better than mine.
I don't know about that. But you were on the campaign trail with him as he went to college, UCA in Conway, ASU in Jonesboro. What was a little bit of the electricity in the air, and what do you think Bill Clinton brought to that youth vote?
I've covered Bill Clinton at a few different events this year, and I was really struck, Roby, by how energized he was, particularly in Conway on Monday. And you could just tell that he really relished being back in his home state and was enthused about trying to help out these candidates. I mean, I really think because of his personal connections to the state and also the candidates, that he really wants them to win. So he was certainly up. What the Democrats think he can do is draw attention, bring a certain celebrity factor to these races, and the idea is to A, get more folks to register to vote, and B, to get more volunteer hours from some of these college kids. And talking to Democrats, they felt pretty good about the Clinton visit, both in terms of the media coverage, but also in terms of what they were able to do in voter reg and in terms of getting more volunteers committed.
Yeah, it's big numbers there. I mean, I think they pushed about 20,000 at all of the events they did, because there were some up in Northwest Arkansas.
And there was a reason why they went to schools, you know, UCA, ASU, and U of A, because they're trying to get these kids out who don't typically vote, Roby, in midterm elections. And that's Senator Pryor's big challenge is, can he remake this electorate from what it typically is in a non-presidential year?
Yeah, the ground game, get out the vote effort, that's what they have really hedged their entire bet on.
Absolutely.
Pryor runs down the ticket. It helps Mike Ross. It helps the congressional candidates. It helps the down ballot candidates as well. I still think that we see Bill Clinton make more appearances on the campaign trail here in Arkansas because he really didn't touch on the African-American vote.
Right.
That's a big part of their ground game, too.
Yeah, talking to Democrats, it sounds like he's going to come back twice more. I think you'll probably see him around here when the early voting period starts, Roby, later this month, and then I think you'll probably see him for a sort of final push, maybe the weekend before the election or a week or so before the election. And you're right. I mean, the African-American vote's going to be crucial for Senator Pryor. He's got to get the volume of African-Americans up, and he's got to really push that in a place like Pine Bluff. here in Pulaski County. So I think you'll see President Clinton back in Central Arkansas before long.
All right, so Republican side here, let's talk about what's going on there. News this week that Congressman Tom Cotton is going to become a father. That's not bad political timing there, and to remind people that you are a new family man.
Right.
You also, too, the Republicans are not sitting on their hands in terms of get out the vote effort. They, too, are also invested a lot and doing a lot. What do your sources tell you their ground game looks like?
Well, look, I think they're going to have all the money they need, and I think you're going to see a very aggressive effort on behalf of Senator Cotton from not just Republicans in Arkansas.
Congressman Cotton. He wants to be Senator
Congressman Cotton. From a lot of, Mr. Cotton, from a lot, as we say at the New York Times, Mr. Cotton, from a lot of the outside groups. There is an investment in Tom Cotton from a lot of national conservatives because of his foreign policy views. Look, there is a desire among the sort of interventionist wing in the Republican Party to have an articulate interventionist, a sort of hardcore hawk. And I think because of that, you'll see him with all the money that he needs going through Election Day. And, you know, look, the fact is, it's a midterm year. President Obama's 6th year in office. And this is a state where, after decades of being a Democratic state in recent cycles, as you know better than anybody, you've finally seen the realignment take hold here, where Arkansas is becoming more like the rest of the South. It's more of a Republican state. The combination of those things gives Mr. Cotton certainly an advantage, and I think if you talk to Republicans in Washington, they're feeling pretty confident about Arkansas.
Arkansas, obviously one of the big states still left in the mix. Alaska is a big state. What are the states that are still being talked about? Because North Carolina seems to be cementing a little bit for Kay Hagan, not as worrisome or problematic from some of the stuff I read nationally.
It's fascinating, and this is why covering politics is so fun, and it's kind of like sports. You know, the cliche is the games aren't won and lost on paper, they're actually won and lost on the field, and it's certainly true in politics too. Who would have thought at the start of this year that in October we'd be talking about the Kansas Senate race or the South Dakota Senate race? But that's why it's neat, because the map is sort of unpredictable this time around. The Republicans need to get 6 seats overall to take back the Senate. And there's a scenario where you can see that taking place. But this is not 2010, Roby, in the sense that the second week in October, you can see some races that are really out of hand. A lot of these races are still really competitive. You mentioned North Carolina, Colorado, Iowa, Alaska. These are races that are still, by the way, all Democratic seats, where they're still very close and margin of error, close to margin of error races. So it is still uncertain as to who's going to control the U.S. Senate next year. And keep in mind that in Louisiana, they play overtime.
Yes, that's right.
So you could see this Senate election being decided in December in Louisiana. By the way, the same Saturday in December of the SEC title game. Now, I don't think LSU is going to be in that game, or Arkansas for that matter either. But that could be the runoff that decides to control the U.S. Senate.
I'm getting the wrap-up time here, but I want to go one more question,
Sure.
and we'll make up the time somewhere else. What are your expectations for the debate on Tuesday night between Cotton and Pryor one-on-one?
Look, I think you're going to see Cotton come out and use the word Obama no less than about 30 times, okay? I mean, that's the centerpiece of his campaign, and for all the obvious reasons that we know. President Obama is very unpopular in the state. And I think in terms of Senator Pryor, he's going to try to localize this election, talk about his connection with the state, what he's done for the state, and then try to portray Mr. Cotton as, you know, out of touch with Arkansas education issues or the Farm Bill, for example. And so I think you're going to see a really aggressive debate where it's one of those cases where, in some ways, Roby, the incumbent has really got to make a move here.
Yeah.
You know,
it's interesting.
The onus is on him.
Jonathan Martin, New York Times, as always.
A treat, Roby.
Good to be with you, my friend.
Woo pig suey.
I appreciate it.